the Wandering Albatross, the largest, the most majestic of all sea birds. When European sailors first ventured down to the Great Southern Ocean towards the Antarctic, they were astounded by these wonderful birds with their 3-meter wingspan that appeared apparently from nowhere. Perhaps because they were such superbly skillful seafarers, they became symbols of good luck. To kill one was to court disaster. But just where they went and what they did on their journeys, nobody really knew until recently. Now, by using ingenious new techniques, some of the answers are slowly being discovered, and they are more astonishing than almost anyone could have imagined. Much of the research is being done on a few scattered specks of land, the Crozet Islands, by a team of French scientists. Henri Wiemerskirch is one of the 40 or so that work there the year round. This is Possession Island, the biggest of the Crozets. They are about as remote a group of islands as you can find on this planet, lying in the Southern Ocean, halfway between Africa and the Antarctic. This is the only land in this vast expanse of otherwise empty ocean, and during the spring and summer, the islands are thronged with animals, seagoing creatures that must come ashore to rear their young. For them, the Crozets are the only nursery within reach. Wandering albatross are among them. Every summer, male wanderers arrive here to nest, and they choose not some sheltered slope, but the top of the huge windswept cliff at Point Bass. Here they sit and wait for their partners of previous seasons. A male recognizes his female immediately, even though he may not have seen her for over a year. He calls to her. And down she comes. Wandering albatross mate for life, and a pair may use the same nest site for 30 years. Young, unmated birds are here too, flirting with ponderous dances and trumpeting calls, slowly establishing relationships with one another. This is a particularly well-studied group, and the history of nearly all its birds is known in detail. Henri Wiemerskirch concentrated his first studies on what the birds did while they were on the island. But this season, he will be trying to discover something else, what they do when they leave it. Rearing a chick takes these big birds just over 12 months, so they can only breed every other year. And just who is doing so and on what date they laid their egg has to be carefully recorded. Renaud and Piaf are old friends of Henri's. They have raised 6 chicks in the last 15 years, which is a pretty good success rate. They've used the same nest site throughout, and this year Once again, Piaf is renovating it. They continually reaffirm the bond between them by gently grooming one another. The smoky patterning on Piaf's breast feathers are characteristic of a female. Renaud is almost pure white, an indication that he's now a mature male. Over the next 3 weeks, they mate many times. The wind on these islands hardly ever ceases, and great gales can suddenly arrive without warning. The Crozet Islands were spewed up from the ocean floor by volcanic action in comparatively recent geological times. Their shores are rocky and perpetually pounded by huge seas. But when summer comes, the animals that use the Crozets as their breeding grounds have no option but to get ashore somehow. Macaroni penguins seem indestructible. Out of water, they are out of their element, and the going can be tough. You can't lay eggs on steep rocks like this. The only safe place is 300 meters above, and that's a long climb if your legs are as short as a penguin's. This is the best site they can find. But after a chick has hatched, its parents will have to repeat the long ascent every few days in order to keep their ravenous young supplied with food. Cormorants aren't the most powerful of flyers, but they can at least get up here by air. Unlike the penguins and the albatross, they're permanent residents of the Crozets and find all the food they need, worms and small fish, in the shallow channels around the coast. Elephant seals come here as well. They too, like the albatross, are great ocean wanderers. For females, the need to reach land is urgent. They often give birth within hours of arriving. Skuas are always nearby to scavenge the incidentals of birth. To produce such large babies, the female elephant seals have to eat voraciously during the months of pregnancy. And the same need drives the female albatross. Piaf, during the mating period, has made frequent trips out to sea and fed intensively. Now she is returning to Possession Island to produce an egg. She lays only one, but what a whopper. Henri and his colleagues keep a close watch on the albatross's progress. Since he's concentrating this season on what the birds do when they leave the island, he has to fit them with special instruments. Piaf can't take off except into the wind, but even when she's grounded, she's not easy to catch. Renaud, doing his duty on the nest, presents less of a problem. Henri fixes a tiny transmitter on his back. Each day, it will send a series of signals up to a satellite and so register Renaud's position wherever he is. And Henri also persuades Renaud to swallow a miniature computer, which will record his internal temperature every 30 seconds. Marine creatures on which an albatross feeds are the same temperature as the near-freezing water. So every time Renaud swallows one, his stomach chills. If his prey is large, his stomach will take several hours to warm up again. If it's small, it'll get back to normal within a few minutes.
Take the beak again. And I will
A metal detector confirms that the sensor is in the correct position. And now Henri will know not only Renaud's flight path, but also when he feeds and the size of his prey. And Renaud, unperturbed by the handling, goes back to care for his egg. A few days later, after Piaf has returned to take over incubation duties, Renaud goes off to sea with his cargo of recording apparatus. Heading away from Possession Island, he passes through flocks of white-chinned petrels feeding on the inshore waters. At the edge of the Crozet Shelf, just before the sea floor drops away to great depths, black-browed albatross have gathered to feed. Squid, one of the albatross's favorite foods. How the birds manage to catch them so frequently is a bit of a puzzle, for squid spend most of their time in very deep water. Some squid certainly come to the surface after spawning, for then they, like their relative cuttlefish, all die. Their bodies float up to the surface in vast numbers, a huge banquet for the shy and the yellow-nosed albatross. The shy albatross can plunge to a metre below the surface, and readily does so if the prize is a mackerel. We human beings fish in these southern waters as well, and the birds have learned that wherever there are ships, fish are likely to appear in their wake. Modern trawlers use satellites to navigate with pinpoint accuracy and are able to target fish shoals with great precision. After a 6-hour run, the net is hauled in. Black-browed albatross are here in strength. Trawl nets are very unselective. They sweep up everything in their path. Human diners, on the other hand, are extremely fussy. That means that many of the fish that are hauled up from the depths, rat-tails, rays, sharks, are simply thrown away. But the albatross make sure that they're not wasted. The kinds of albatross that follow fishing boats are usually those that feed in flocks anyway, and are therefore accustomed to squabbling among themselves in order to get their fair share. The smaller birds are shearwaters. They are expert divers and can swim down to depths of 10 meters using their wings as paddles. Wandering albatross, like Renault, only occasionally follow the trawlers. Instead of squabbling with others, they travel vast distances over the open ocean to increase their chances of finding an isolated squid here, an occasional fish there. Renault has now been at sea for 7 days. Every few hours, his transmitter has signalled his position by way of a satellite back to France. From France, it has been radioed back to the main French base on Possession Island. But that is a 6-hour march from where Henri is working and living. In his small hut away on the other side of the island, he doesn't yet know how Renault has been getting on. But tonight, a group of scientists have walked over from the main base.
Parce que bon, je mets le jus de la tomate, plus la tomate, mais là on met du concentré de tomate, plus de l'eau.
They've brought with them fresh vegetables and fresh meat, and more importantly for Henri, word of Renault's journey.
Bon appétit, messieurs. La Marseillaise, quoi. C'est pas le bon riz, il faut du riz long. Non, c'est vrai que celui-là il colle un peu, tu vois, même si...
The news is cause for celebration.
Après le 600, quoi. Oui.
Bravo, bravo, bravo.
The facts from the satellite headquarters reveals that Renaud is making an extraordinary journey. Riding the prevailing wind, he travelled over 5,000 kilometres in the first week. After leaving the island, he headed south towards the Antarctic continent. Then he turned west, following the coast. A wanderer weighs up to 12 kilos, but it rarely ever flaps its wings, for it knows how to exploit to perfection the gusts of wind that are deflected upwards by the waves. Indeed, strong winds are so important for a wandering albatross that their absence is almost certainly the reason why these birds never travel beyond the Southern Ocean. The violent storms that travel everlastingly around the Antarctic continent make these waters very perilous for human beings. But they are the very factors that enable these birds to make such extraordinary journeys. They use them as tail or crosswinds to carry them away from the crozets. Then they loop around the vast depressions or tack back in order to get home. Back on the crozets, Piaf hasn't fed for a week and is both hungry and thirsty. She spreads her wings so that the nest doesn't get waterlogged and chill the egg. And the rain, at least, gives her a drink. The huge waves cause no great problem for the seagoing visitors to the island. As the depression moves past, the wind swings to the southwest and brings up a raging blizzard from the Antarctic. And the stormy weather stirs up the waters, bringing plankton to the surface, which becomes food for the birds and the seals. The black and white Cape petrels settle on the water and pick up small shrimps, one by one. Salvin's prions collect even smaller creatures by filtering the water through hair-like membranes in their bills. Now the gales are slackening. The wandering albatross come in to relieve their partners at the nest. Renaud has been away for 12 days. The transmitter reveals that during that time, he's travelled an almost unbelievable 8,000 kilometres. Piaf welcomes him home. Every day, Henri makes a round of the colony with a dummy egg on a net. It's a cunning device which enables him to weigh a bird with minimum trouble. And he wants to know how much weight Renaud has put on while he's been away at sea. The process relies on Renaud's absolute commitment to incubation. He's 2 kilos heavier than when he left. The temperature recorder reveals that he ate on average once every 100 kilometers and consumed several kilos of food every day. Before this work, no one had any idea that albatross gathered food from so far away while still sharing duties of incubation. But the travels of the other great wanderers, the elephant seals, are still largely unknown. Henri suspects that they go to the Antarctic shelf to feed, but like the albatross, somehow or other, they find their way back here to breed. The boss of a beach, a male weighing up to 3 tons, claims conjugal rights to all the females on his patch. But there's always someone who disputes that. The challenger on the left is fresher than the beachmaster, who has already fought dozens of bouts in defense of his title. And the challenger, too, can rear up just that little higher, which gives him a crucial advantage. The boss is defeated. The harem has a new master. He now mates with the females as, one by one, they cease suckling and become sexually receptive again. And the dethroned king can only watch. Soon after mating, the females leave the island and swim away. But where to is another of those mysteries. The abandoned pups gather in groups along the beachfront. They store their mother's milk as blubber, and now they're converting that into muscle and bone. But they must go to sea before long to get food for themselves, and to do that, they have to get past a pod of hungry killer whales. Killer whales are among the most skillful predators in the sea. A mother and her calf are patrolling offshore, waiting. The young seals are much more agile in the water than they were on land, and scientists have discovered that in the open ocean they dive to 1 kilometre or more in search of food. But before long, they will have to try and run the gauntlet. Their cousins, fur seals, are also here. Their numbers have been increasing at a phenomenal rate during the past decade or so as they rebuild their populations after being almost wiped out by the sealers in the last century. They usually feed on fish, but will take squid when it's around. They also have been breeding on their own beaches. At the head of this one, a waterfall has eroded a deep pool where the young pups can play away from the killer whales that lurk offshore. The waterfall never dries up. It rains almost every day in the Crozets. One colony of light-mantled sooty albatross regularly build their nests beneath overhangs. And that's particularly beneficial for the chicks. Their downy coats are excellent for keeping warm, but they're not nearly so efficient if they get sopping wet. There's a colony of the closely related sooty albatross here too. They nest much earlier than the wanderers, and their chicks are already quite big. Henri is studying these birds as well. They're much smaller than the wanderers, 3 kilos as against 10. But like the wanderers, they only produce a chick every other year. Exactly why this should be is another question that Henri is investigating. His first results are suggesting that the reason is connected with the feeding habits of the adults. Transmitters attached to the light-mantled sooty albatross have already shown that they fly all the way to the shores of the Antarctic for food. The adults spend so much time commuting and searching for food that it takes many months for the chick to grow to full size. And that may be the reason why a pair can only manage to do it every other year. The sooties, when they start to pair, perform a marvellously graceful courtship flight, an aerial pas de deux. Like the wanderers, young light-mantled sooties also attend regular communal dances, getting to know everyone eligible before picking a permanent mate. Meanwhile, At the bottom of the cliff, other birds are flocking in to breed, but these are flightless. King penguins are as graceful in the water as the albatross are in the air. Over half the world's population breed here in the Crozets, but observations over the past few years have shown that their populations are changing in an extremely dramatic but as yet unexplained way. There are several colonies on Possession Island. In this one, in 1968, there were 3,000 birds. Today, there are 60,000 of them. Why the huge increase? Like the Wanderer, king penguins take a full year to raise their young. So new breeders preparing to lay are surrounded by 12-month-old chicks, some already beginning to acquire their seagoing feathers. Others are still covered with down and are still being fed by their parents. Skuas are here too, as they are around every colony of every kind on the island. There are giant petrels as well. The sealers used to call them sea vultures. Like vultures, they have dirty faces and bad tempers, squabbling viciously with one another over the corpses that litter every colony. Tough though these penguins are, getting ashore during high seas can be hazardous, and sometimes a penguin is injured. The petrels hang around just in case. And when they do find a casualty, there is no mercy. Penguins nearly always take a daily bathe to freshen up and wash off the mud that accumulated while they were standing around on shore. Only when they are immaculately clean will they set off to feed. Just where they go was another of those mysteries. And once again, the French team is investigating the question by fitting the birds with satellite transmitters and depth recorders. The equipment has revealed that the king penguins too are great travellers. They swim south for 500 kilometres to a particular area of the Southern Ocean where they hunt fish, diving to depths of 300 metres to do so. They do this at the polar front. Here, relatively warm water meets the cold waters of the Antarctic, causing upwelling of nutrients and a proliferation of marine life. They can make the return trip in 3 days, porpoising for much of the way. But back at the island, they too have to get past the patrolling killer whales. The killers prefer seal meat, but while they wait for such big meals, they will take penguins and chase them not only for food, but almost, it seems, for sport. This penguin, still heavy with a big meal, has landed at Baie de Marin. This is the unloading beach for the French base and home to 50,000 king penguins. And every year there are more. To measure the penguins' weight before and after their feeding trips, the scientists, Henri's colleagues, have fenced off a section of the colony, and the only way in and out is over a weighbridge. Individual penguins that have taken up residence within it are then caught. Every penguin is fitted with a transmitter and a flipper tag. Now, whenever this penguin goes in and out of the enclosure, its transmitter records its identity and the weighbridge its weight. A video camera on a pole monitors their behaviour so that a scientist can sit in his centrally heated bedroom and watch the intimate behaviour of his subjects without disturbing them. And every time one of his birds leaves a colony or comes back, its weight and identity is automatically recorded. These and other studies are showing that the birds are now catching more food and living longer. And this seems to be at least part of the reason why the king penguin population has doubled in the last 30 years. Wandering albatross populations, on the other hand, are declining rapidly. Their numbers have halved in the same period, and Henri's research is now beginning to explain that. The first clues came when a disproportionate fall in the number of females returning to the colony was detected. That left a lot of males without mates, and that upset the courtship process. A pair needs years to perfect their courtship dance to their mutual satisfaction. The familiar movements of the ritual reassure a bird that the other individual approaching so close to the nest is its mate. But today, with more males than females in the colony, the process is frequently interrupted by fights between rival males. A female, during the early stages of courtship, may, these days, be approached by several males at the same time, and she doesn't know, literally, which way to turn. Fortunately, established pairs like Renault and Piaf are not troubled by the problem, and changeovers at their nest take place without difficulty. Now it's Piaf's turn to contribute to the research. Henri fits her with a satellite recorder. Now he'll be able to discover where she goes to feed and perhaps get a clue to the cause of the decline of the females. She flies away from the island, but not south towards the Antarctic like Renault and the rest of the male birds. She goes north, up to the subtropical waters of South Africa, one of the prime fishing areas for the tuna fleets. Fishermen have a particularly effective way of catching bluefin tuna. Every day, each boat baits 3,000 hooks on a long line with pieces of fish and squid. The line is paid out from the stern. It's gigantic, 100 kilometers long. Each lump of bait on its hook floats close to the surface for 100 meters or so before it sinks. Dozens of birds follow each ship, attracted by this bait. The Wandering Albatross are the biggest of them. They're big enough, in fact, to swallow the bait whole. It takes 5 hours to pay out all 3,000 hooks, so the birds have lots of opportunities. Then the line is hauled in. The catch is usually a rich one. Bluefin tuna can grow to 150 kilos and are a great delicacy in Japan. A single fish can fetch $50,000. But the catch is not just tuna. For every 2,500 hooks set, at least one albatross is caught. Every year, an estimated 100 million hooks are baited in the Southern Ocean. That means the death, each year, of 40,000 albatross. Of these, around 8,000 are likely to be wanderers, and Henri's satellite studies confirm that most of these will be female. This is one of them. Piaf, this season at least, has escaped. It's late autumn now on Possession Island, and the gales are once again increasing in severity. Piaf and Renault's chick has hatched. Within the next few days, both its parents will leave it. Every few weeks, an adult will come back with a ration of fish, but otherwise the chick must sit out the winter alone. The penguin chicks, too, have been largely abandoned by their parents. Their meals are even more infrequent, only every few months or so. Before the winter ends and better weather returns, over half the chicks will have died from exposure and hunger. Wandering albatross chicks do rather better. By the end of the winter, Piaf and Renault's youngster, thanks to its more frequent feeds, is almost as big as its parents. It sits looking in the direction of the sea, as though impatient for the time when it can take off. Wing muscles have to be exercised repeatedly if they're to become strong. By the beginning of summer, the new season's breeders are already on eggs. Piaf's chick has now lost all its down. Within a few weeks, it will go to sea for the first time. It's off. It won't be back on Possession Island for 5 whole years. The earnest seaman called this bird the Wandering Albatross, but that, in a way, was an injustice. The studies being made by Henri and others like him are now showing that this bird is by no means an aimless wanderer. It's a skilled seafarer, navigating with such precision that it reaches its chosen destinations with astonishing accuracy and reliability. The elephant seal and the fur seal, the sooties and the king penguins are the same. Just how these wanderers navigate the southern seas is a mystery yet to be solved.